All right, guys, welcome back again to Elite Start Training, and welcome back to our track awareness module within our basic search operations course. In the last video we talked about the relationship between sign and the baseline. Whenever we're looking for tracks and whenever we're looking for sign, we're looking for pieces. We're not necessarily looking for the whole. It's very rarely are we going to have a track that shows every characteristic of that impression. So we're looking for the subtle little changes to the environment that indicate to us that this is been caused by a creature's passage, that this is sign. To be an effective tracker, you must be proficient in what is called micro tracking. This is a concept that I picked up from Fernando Morera. But the idea of micro tracking, that's where you look at specific characteristics, little individual components of the track to determine whether it's sign, and then determine whether or not that sign is related to a human. Looking at the photograph we have in the picture here, we see a picture of gravel, and into the untrained eye that this may appear to be just some gravel there in a parking lot or along a trail or whatever. But those of you that have done some training in tracking and kind of know what you're looking for the individual pieces of the track and not focus on just the clear outline of a track impression, we start to see characteristics that we can pull a lot of information from this photograph. Okay. Some of the things that we're looking for in tracks. There's some things that we're looking for in tracks as you're going through this exercise of studying and going through and trying to look at a micro level some of the characteristics of the track. These are some of the things that you look for. A good way to practice this is you lay a track down. Try to find at least 5 individual clues inside of that track. The first thing we want to look for is an outline. That's the defined edge around the track. The defined edge, okay? That's something that's very easy to identify depending on the medium that we step in or the texture. It may be instances where it may be just a portion of an edge or just a slight variance that we can pick up that shows that it's an outline of a track. We want to look at the shape too. We want something that's large enough to be human, has some level of flattening inside of it. That's how we distinguish that from animal activity. It's going to look a lot different. We're going to look for that flattening and that compression. We're going to look for those areas that have been compressed by a human's weight. Here's some more examples of flattening or compression. This one here we have in some clay. Not only do we see a good outline here in this track, and we do have a crease back here as well. We actually have the entire track here almost included in this photo. We have some good outlines and some good characteristics of the track, but you can see where it's all been flattened. And we actually also have a really good impression of the shoes motif here in the negative image inside the track here as well. But it's been flattened. Everything else seems to have a little bit more texture around it on the outsides, but you can tell, especially here in the toe bed, where everything's been flattened and compressed. Same thing here on the right, where we have a lot of this loose, crumbly textured soil. And not only can we see a variance in the color, but we can clearly see the areas have been flattened. Okay, we very clearly see the areas have been flattened that have gone through there. Okay, flattening, compression. We're also looking for displacement. This is whenever an object has been moved from its original resting place. We can see here the impression of the leaf that is now residing over here. It's a good example of displacement there. Something stepped on that, and not only stepped on it and left that impression, but it picked it up and then moved it over here. So it's displacement, and and the material has been transferred as well. We can actually see the mud on top of the leaf there as well. Material transfer. It likely did not do that on its own. We have here on the right a socket where this piece of gravel once sat. It sat in there, and then it was kicked up by a shoe or is kicked up by someone's passage and moved over here. But we can see the hole where it used to sit in. So that object has been displaced. More examples of displacement here. We have another socket. Actually, we have 2 sockets here and here. This socket belonging to this rock, and then this rock belonging to that socket. Here on the right, we're looking at the creases. We're looking at the creases around these rocks and around this piece of mulch here. You can see that little gapping between the rock and the rest of the soil there, and that's caused by someone stepping on it, their weight landing on it, and it pushing this direction. So this is an indicator of what direction that individual was moving. But that's something else we look for there. We look for that gapping. Another example of displacement here. This is at a creek crossing where someone went from one side of the creek to the other. We can see a bit here where a big chunk of the creek bed on the other side has been taken out, where someone's landed. Down here at the bottom as well. And then up here at the top where they started to come out of the creek, and they cause a disturbance here as well. We can start seeing some of that pattern. We can start seeing where not only where someone made the crossing, but we can see where their next step was, and then we can logically say that, well, if this was a left foot, this is a right foot, somewhere up in here, there's going to be another left foot. Okay, we can start seeing some of that pattern as we're going through and looking at the pictures and we're studying the sign. Here we see some displacement in vegetation. We can see where we have this sapling here, and we can see where this vine has been pulled around on the back side of it. Some of those leaves are flipped over, exposing the underside of those leaves. Same thing here. We can see where we have the leaves up here on the top and around. They have a dark green color and they have a smooth texture on top. These right here, they have a rougher texture and they're a lighter color. So they've been flipped up and around. And so you can see where this has been all twisted. It's not in what would be considered a natural shape, how it would normally exist in the environment. We would need to look at some additional clues around us to determine definitively if this was a human caused sign or not. But looking at the damage, you can tell it was something large that did it. So we would want to study around and try to find some additional clues that really definitively say this is human, and hopefully enough sign that we can say that this is our human. This is the person that we're out there looking for. We've talked about material transfer a little bit already, but we'll continue. We'll show some specific examples here. This is where soil, debris, or mud, some kind of a substance that's deposited as part of the next footfall impression. An example here down here with the leaf with the mulch. Obviously, whenever this leaf fell, it landed on top of the mulch. So the mulch would not have ended up on top of the leaf there, along with these little small deposits of dirt that have been stepped on and brought with it. So this is someone, they walked upon this, they stepped in the mulch, then they stepped on the leaf, and they transferred that material on top of that leaf there. That's a good example of transfer. Same thing on the right. We can see a bit of crumblings of dirt and soil on top, where someone has deposited material on top of that leaf. If it were to fall out of the tree and just land on the surface, that's not how it would rest until something came along and deposited that on top of it. Here we see on harder surfaces another couple more examples of material transfer. We can see on the concrete here where someone stepped off from the dirt, the mud, and they start to leave tracks. Actually, several different sets of tracks here. A few different impressions on this, but that's where they came off of the soil and they stepped on the concrete and took that with them. A really good impression here on the deck wood here of a track. Some really good impression from transfer. Another example of something we may look for is bruised vegetation. But we can see here where we have the piece of mulch here, and with the dandelion leaf over top, you can see this crease, right? There's a crease that runs right down the middle. There's actually a couple of them that run right down the middle of the leaf, where something stepped on that. They stepped on it and they caused it to be bruised. And it's caused by chlorophyll that's bleeding due to breakage within the plant's cellular structure. That's what causes that. So you'll see initially whenever it's done, it will take a little bit of time to bleed and kind of go to this darker green color. And then as time goes on, it will dry out and it'll go from a dark green to a light tan color and eventually to a brownish color. So over time it will change colors, and that's a good indication of when something may have come through and stepped on it. We can take a look at the color, but that's more of an advanced topic whenever it comes to aging and indexing. And you can also see, again, this is not the best photo ever, but there's a lot of transfer, right? A lot of transfer up in here where someone or something stepped on it and deposited a lot of the sandy, crumbly soil that they were stepping on and walking through, deposited that on top of the leaf there. So that's another good indicator of sign that's also shown in the picture here. So that's going to bring us to the end of this video. Again, this is very much a high level breeze through introduction of some of the more common things that we look for when we're looking for tracks. If we were to do this properly, we would spend a few hours in the field studying tracks, and going through the exercise of identifying each type of disturbance that we see in a track, and assigning it a value, saying that this is transfer, this is bruised vegetation, this is displacement. We would go through that. So, but this is just to kind of again introduce some high level things, give you some things to look for. But this brings us to the end of this video, and so in the next video we'll talk about the impact of lighting whenever we're looking for tracks. Thank you.